Dr. Eleanor Webb had spent years of her life researching the Loch Ness Monster, an obsession sparked by childhood stories and a deep-rooted belief in the truth behind the legend. As a seasoned cryptozoologist, she had traveled the world in search of proof, but nothing had ever stirred her soul like the idea of discovering the truth behind what lay beneath the murky waters of Loch Ness. For centuries, the world had speculated about the creature. Was it a prehistoric survivor, a misidentified animal, or something far more sinister? Eleanor believed it was something ancient, something cursed. She had spent weeks preparing for this final expedition, and now she stood on the shores of Loch Ness, ready to put her theories to the test. The day was foggy, the waters of the loch barely visible beyond a few feet from the shore. Eleanor set out in a small boat, determined to find proof once and for all. She had spent months studying local lore and ancient texts that spoke of a ritual performed centuries ago, one that had summoned a creature from the depths of the earth. It was said that the creature wasn't just a guardian of the loch, but a curse of being born from an ancient pact, twisted and cursed into the form of the legendary monster. Eleanor kept her camera at the ready, hoping to capture any evidence. As she moved further out into the loch, she felt the familiar thrill of anticipation mixed with an underlying sense of dread. The air grew heavier, and the surface of the water became eerily still, almost too calm for comfort. She continued to scan the water, her eyes straining through the mist, waiting for any sign of movement. Then it happened. A deep, low growl vibrated through the air, so faint that she thought it might be a trick of her mind. But then the sound came again, unmistakable, something massive moving beneath the surface of the water. Eleanor's heart pounded. She saw a brief ripple in the distance, and her hands shook as she lifted her camera to capture the first glimpse of the creature. A long, serpentine shape emerged for a split second, too quick to get a good shot. It vanished just as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Eleanor breathless and staring at the spot where it had been. She whispered to herself, her voice trembling. It's real. Her excitement was short-lived. The boat jerked, its engine sputtering before dying altogether. Eleanor cursed under her breath and pulled at the cord, desperately trying to restart it. Panic rose in her chest as the boat began drifting. And then, she saw it again, a massive fin cutting through the water, so large it could easily swallow her whole. This time it wasn't just a shadow, it was unmistakably real. Before she could react, the boat lurched violently to one side, its hull scraping against something beneath the surface. Eleanor's breath quickened as she struggled to maintain control. The ripples in the water grew larger, the surface churning like something was pushing against it. For a moment, she thought she saw a massive tail rise from the depths, crashing down with a force that rocked her boat. Terrified, Eleanor managed to restart the engine and sped toward the shore. But as she glanced over her shoulder, she saw the creature following her, moving faster than she could imagine, its form just below the surface. The water seemed to bow and twist beneath its weight. As she neared a small, rocky cove, Eleanor turned her boat toward the shore, barely able to control her speed. The fog was so thick now that she could barely make out the outline of the land, but she knew she had to reach solid ground. It was then that she noticed something strange. The water around her had fallen completely still. There was no sign of the creature, no movement at all. She had reached the shore, but the eerie quiet seemed worse than the chaos of the chase. Something was wrong. Eleanor grabbed the map from her bag, her hands shaking, and began to scan the symbols and markings that matched descriptions she'd read about a mysterious ritual that had supposedly been performed hundreds of years ago on the shores of Loch Ness. The ritual had been intended to summon a guardian spirit to protect the land, but it had gone terribly wrong. Instead of a protective spirit, the ritual had birthed something darker, something that now haunted the loch. The Loch Ness Monster was no mere beast, it was the result of an ancient curse, twisted and tormented by the ritual's failure. Eleanor walked toward an old stone circle that she had located on the map. It was covered in moss and nearly hidden by the fog. The stones were ancient, their surfaces carved with strange symbols. She knew she had found the site, the very place where the curse had been sealed centuries ago. As her fingers traced the carvings on the stones, the water behind her rippled. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized the creature was close, but not chasing her, it was waiting. Eleanor turned and saw it then, the massive form of the Loch Ness Monster rising from the water, its long neck emerging first, followed by its hulking body and glowing, otherworldly eyes. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The creature towered over her, a massive serpentine figure that loomed above her. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of jagged teeth, but it didn't attack. Instead, it stared at her with an almost mournful expression. There was no malice in its eyes, only the haunting weight of centuries of torment. Eleanor backed away slowly, not daring to look away from the creature. She had uncovered the truth. But it was more than she had bargained for. The Loch Ness Monster was not a mere legend, it was a living curse, a creature doomed to haunt the loch forever. The water around her began to churn, and the creature let out a low, mournful growl. In that moment, Eleanor understood that the creature was not a threat, at least not in the way she had imagined. It was a trapped soul, bound to the waters by an ancient, forgotten pact. It wasn't hunting her, it was warning her not to uncover what had been sealed away. The fog closed in around her, and Eleanor turned, her mind racing. She knew she had to leave. As she turned back to the boat, the creature's eyes followed her one last time, fading into the mist, vanishing as if it had never existed. Eleanor made it back to the mainland, her heart still pounding in her chest. She would never speak of what she had seen to anyone, not fully at least. The truth was too dangerous, too powerful to be shared. Loch Ness had its secrets, and some mysteries were meant to remain buried. But as Eleanor looked back at the dark waters, she couldn't shake the feeling that the creature was still out there, waiting for the next soul brave or foolish enough to venture too close. The curse of Loch Ness was not a story, it was a warning. And it was not over.